I come bearing some bad news. Now, don't kill the messenger because I have nothing to do with this, but you probably aren't going to be receiving $10,000 for free from the government. The more and more information that comes out, the more we're finding that it's kind of a pipe dream to assume that everyone who owns a small business is going to just get a $10,000 check. It's not going to be quite like the $1,200 stimulus that every tax-paying citizen is going to get. There's limited funds, and the more details that come out, it's not looking as great. So this is directly from the CARES Act. It says, in general, during the covered period, an entity included for eligibility in subsection B, including small business concerns, private nonprofit organizations, and small agricultural cooperatives that applies for a loan under Section 7B2 of the Small Business Act, businesses may request that the administrator provide an advance that is in the amount requested by such applicant within 3 days after the administrator receives the application. This is the thing that we keep hearing from every source. You apply, within 3 days, money in your account. The sticking point is here that it says you need to request a specific amount, but nowhere on the application does it allow you to type in how much in advance you actually want to request. All there was a checkbox that says, I want to be considered for in advance. And they keep using the verbiage up to $10,000. And now more information is coming out that it's most likely not going to be $10,000 for nearly every single applicant. And it's kind of crazy that they didn't even give us an option to fill in how much you actually want to request. And it kind of leaves them with a gray area to give however much they want, because it's up to $10,000. They could give you $50, they could give you $5, they give you $9,000. We don't know how exactly they're going to determine this, especially given that, as the time of this video, I can only assume millions and millions of applications have been sent out. In the next section, it says verification. This is again in the CARES Act. Before dispersing amounts under this subsection, the administrator shall verify that the applicant is an eligible entity by accepting a self-certification from the applicant under penalty of perjury pursuant to section 1746, blah, 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 blah. So they're saying that they are allowing, this is in the CARES Act, that they're allowing people to self-verify that they're a business that's eligible. But now we're realizing that they're coming back later requesting more information, which I would think would be obvious from the standpoint of you don't want to just send out these checks to people or businesses who aren't necessarily deserving. But this is part of the CARES Act that says self-certification, and the SBA isn't doing exactly that. Now, I don't want the SBA just to sound like bad guys because they're literally getting millions of applications, so they need to figure out some process for this, but it kind of does go against the exact act that they're supposed to follow. Under the next section, amount. The amount of the advance provided under this subsection shall not be more than $10,000. That's another legal way of explaining that it could be less than $10,000. It just says it should not be more than $10,000. The next section says repayment. An applicant shall not be required to repay any amounts of an advance provided under this subsection, even if subsequently denied a loan under this section. Now, I've been looking up as much as I can on this, people who have called in and requested more information, and we're hearing from some high-level SBA reps that the grant will be based on the number of employees you have. Now, nowhere in the CARES Act does it say you need to have any amount of employees to be eligible for this EIDL grant. But we're seeing that the more employees you have, the more likely you are to get closer to that $10,000 mark. So if you're just an independent contractor and you say that you made, $20,000 with your small business last year and it's just you, I'd be really surprised if they choose you as one of the people to get $10,000 when other businesses are, let's say a business has 20 employees and they apply as well, especially when now we're finding that it's kind of a sliding scale, which does seem fair, but also kind of goes against exactly what the CARES Act sounded like in the actual language of the act. They're also saying that you must first get contacted by a loan officer to get approval for the grant based on some unknown formula of employees to income ratio. Now, again, that wasn't said anywhere in the actual act, and that you'll receive this within 3 days, but it's almost guaranteed that unless you have a certain number of employees and a certain number of income that no one's really sure of, that it's not going to be $10,000. And it's based off of their own criteria, through the SBA. What we're seeing is, unless you have 10 employees or more, you're probably not going to get that $10,000 as of right now. The more and more that I look into this, the more I'm kind of chalking it up as a loss. I personally have 25 employees right now, and I'll be very surprised if I receive the 10K. It's not going to be something that I bank on and expect, and I would so even less if I was just an independent sole contractor working for myself. And again, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. Don't kill the messenger here, because this is just the information that I'm picking up and I've received through other people who have called into the SBA. Everything's still kind of up in the air. Now, on the timeline of this, we kept on seeing this timeline of 3 days. You apply, money in your bank in 3 days. Well, today is the 3rd of April, and it's now been 5 days since this online application was available to fill out, and 7 days since I personally filled out the first application, which was this long, arduous 2 or 3 hour application. You had to submit all these forms, and then they sent everyone an email like, hey, that doesn't matter anymore. Fill out this online application, get money within 3 days. And it's simply not happening. I mean, when I saw the 3-day mark, I was like, how is that even possible to send out all these forms and register everything within 3 days when there's literally millions of businesses? There's 30 million small businesses, and I'm sure a majority of those applied. I don't know how they could have even possibly thought that they could do that in 3 days. Again, it's not the SBA who said they could do it in 3 days. It was the CARES Act who said you would receive that. And then the SBA is like, hey, what the heck is going on? We can't do this in 3 days. We've never done anything like this. This is unprecedented. So I don't really blame the SBA for this, because they're just getting this thrown on them like, hey, figure this out and do it within 3 days. And they're like, we have to go through 7 million applicants in 3 days. Something that I found was pretty funny. On the EIDL information page on the SBA website, they actually changed, they didn't do a very good job of changing it, but they actually changed a section under the eligibility portion where it used to say the economic injury disaster loan advance funds will be made within 3 days. Now it says the economic injury disaster loan advance funds will be made within days. They took out the 3. It just says days. So now it's really up in the air on how long exactly it might take to get this. We have some sources of people who have called in again to different reps, and one of the reps had said it could take between 3 and 4 weeks in order to get this application process done for each individual applicant. I could see it potentially being longer, and to expect a request for more information within 10 days. I expect that request to be something like 941 forms, payroll summaries, maybe lease agreements, just showing that your basic expenses, just general proof, potentially tax forms. I know in the first application, you had to send in a lot of that, so I can only assume that in the second application that you're going to be requested that after the initial online form. Now, I filled out this application almost straight away after they allowed people to do it online. Looking at my confirmation number, I was like number 34,000 in line, which is pretty close up there to the first people who filled it out. I filled it out right away, so I'll be one of the first people to know, because this is first come, first serve, and as soon as I know the next steps, I'll definitely report that to you. So make sure you subscribe to be notified of what the next steps are as soon as I receive them, because if you're applying now as of the release of this video, you're probably going to be applicant several million. And again, I don't blame the SBA, because this is just a monumental task. They've never done anything like this. And it really does make sense that there would be some kind of sliding scale where an individual business owner with just one employee or just theirself gets less than a business with multiple employees. But really, if you have more than 10 employees, a $10,000 grant really isn't going to do much for you, because, I mean, even for myself, that's like, that doesn't even pay for 10 employees for 1 week of work or 2 weeks of work. So I don't really know. The idea here is just kind of strange, because $10,000 isn't going to be enough for a larger business, more than 10 employees. It really would make a difference for individual people. So, they're doing the best they can, but the program doesn't really necessarily make sense on that point. So what can you do in order to get the highest amount possible? Well, you can fill out that online EIDL form as soon as possible. There might still be funds left. If you own a business, you're probably going to be prioritized if you have employees. So fill that out as soon as possible. I'll link that in the description below. If you haven't already filled that out, do that first. Exit out of this video and fill that out as soon as possible. Fill out that application correctly. Make sure that Your entity start date. If you purchase it, make sure the time of purchase is correct. Check that box that says that you want to be considered to receive the advance. Just make sure all that information is correct. I have another video where I go over exactly how to fill that out. Go and watch that video. I'll link that as well. And fill it out correctly, because then they're not going to have to reach out to you and ask, hey, what's this, what's that? Because think they have millions of people to deal with. They're going to deal with the ones who fill it out properly first. And then have your documents ready. Have those 941 forms, the payroll summaries, your tax documents. Have those ready to go. So once you get requests, you can, boom, shoot them right back. Make their lives easier. Think about what they have to do and what they're going through. Make their lives as easy as possible for them to accept you and get those funds in your bank account. Now, if you want to be updated on updates with this program, the EIDL program, or the Paycheck Protection Program, make sure you subscribe, because I'm posting everything I can possibly find out about these programs. And until next time, hope you have a profitable day.